Welcome to Creole and Cajun Living with Bomb Cherry. In this video, I will be showing you how I make my reusable cloth pads with an exposed core. And here are some of the items you will need. You will need a pattern. You would also need fabric and matching thread, pins, scissors, markers, sewing machine, or if you're doing it by hand, needle and thread. So I've created my own patterns, and I have multiple sizes and a few different shapes as well. While creating my pattern, I kept the beginner sewer in mind. Yes, I have my main piece. I then have my inner sewing line piece, and then I have my core piece. Okay, so let's get to it. I'm going to fold my material over. Want to make sure that it's large enough for my pattern piece. I'm going to just iron it a little bit because I do want to get those wrinkles out. And I'm going to place my pattern piece with the fold line on the actual fold of the material. And then I'm going to just trace it out. Next, I cut out the pattern pieces. I repeat my steps once again for the other layers of fabric. Here I'm showing a more advanced way of cutting my pattern piece. I'm weighing the piece down and using my rotary cutter and mat in order to just simply cut out the pattern piece. Okay, so it looks like I lost a clip somewhere, but these are my core pieces. And this is to go inside of the exposed core to create the absorbency that's needed for the pad. Okay, so what I've done here is you'll see where I've taken a couple of layers of different types of fabrics in order to create my core. Okay, so here is how I create my exposed core topper. I'm going to trace out the core line the same way I did when I was making the inserts. The difference is I'm not going to cut on the cut line. Okay, so here it is again. I'm going to trace the core, but I'm going to cut around the core shape. Now, because I want my core to be two different sides, I cut out the first piece and then I cut out the second piece. I then place the right sides together and then I can pin them in place. Okay, so let's do a recap before I continue. Pattern piece number 1. That will be one of the main sides to the pad itself. So this pattern piece number 1, but cut out of a different fabric. My having two different pattern designs on each side of the pad is optional. Pattern piece number 3 is the core, whether it's the inside of the core or the core topper. Okay, so now it's time to put everything together. Okay, so I'm going to take it to my machine and sew on the core's cutting line all the way around. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is remove the pins and cut around the stitching, making sure not to cut any of the stitches, but cut as close as possible. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is pull the two pieces apart so I can snip on one side, on the side that will not be shown. And I'm going to split it down the middle and flip it inside out as such. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is insert my core's absorbency layers inside of the core topper. This layer will determine whether you are creating a panty liner or a pad for regular to medium flow or heavy flow or an overnight pad. Okay, so now it's time for placement. I'm going to figure out exactly where I want to place my core on my topper. So here I am stitching my core into place. Okay, so it came out really nice. And now what I'm going to do is put the pad together, right sides facing each other, line it up correctly, and then pin it in place. Okay, so I've pinned everything and I left an area here where I will flip it inside out once finished sewing. So I'm going to sew around the edges, leaving that area open. Okay, so back to the table and I'm removing my pins. I've sewn completely around, leaving one of my wing tips open so I can turn it inside out. So I'm going to just make sure that I caught all the raw edges, making sure that everything is neat by trimming off any excess threads and any excess seam allowance that I do not need. And here is where I will slowly and carefully flip the pad inside out. Okay, so in order to finish this pad up, I'm going to flatten everything up using my iron. I'm then going to close the pad up at the wing, and then I'm going to top stitch and then decide on whether I'm going to close this up with snaps, buttons, or Velcro, and that would depend on the customer and their desires. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe.